Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast for our Group of Five deep dive. I'm your co-host, Mike Calabrese, joined as always by the Action Network's Mike Iannello. We are coming off an immaculate 4-0 start in week 0. Reminds me of the line from Alec Baldwin in The Departed. And here we are now, getting some momentum. Nothing says momentum like hitting a Vanderbilt bet when they win by 53 points, but we're not going to belabor the point. People are listening because this is a week 1 podcast. We're finally here. The appetizer portion of the college football season is over. We got the full slate. And here's what we're going to do for you in this show. We're going to go through our G5 heroes of the week every single week, giving shout outs to players, coaches, officials, administrators, anyone who made our gambling dreams come true. Then we're going to get into our best bets. The G5 High Five round robin. We're going to give you 5 picks. Use them however you want. Sprinkle them into parlays, put them in a round robin, tag them onto some of your favorite bets. And then we're going to close out the show with our Underdog Moneyline Parlay. And the best part about this is a single bet could hit you 10-1, 12-1, 20-1 in some cases when we're pairing up some of these underdogs that are feisty here in the month of September. Iannello, where's your head at after a great start to our season? And is there any particular game that you've really been chomping at the bit to throw down a bet really for months leading up to week 1?
Yeah, it's not often you wake up Sunday morning, pumping your chest out after betting Vanderbilt and UConn, but that's where we are. That's the G5. Sometimes you gotta get down in the mud and dig around in the garbage, and sometimes you find some gems, and that's what we did last week. So 4-0 felt pretty good. I don't know if there's a specific game I've been chopping at the bit at. I think it's just all the games. It's just digging through and you find trying to decide which G5 teams are going to get the doors blown off them, and then which could be frisky. And this every week 1 especially, there's going to be these games where you look around and a G5 team is within a touchdown of an SEC team in the midway through the second quarter, and you're like, ooh. So it's just finding which one is that going to be.
So it's tricky here for my G5 It's tricky here for my hero of the week on our podcast, because a portion of this could just go to you, because the fact that you picked UConn and that they were not only covering the whole way, but they were flirting with maybe, taking the lead, winning that game against Utah State. I know they had an injury at quarterback, but they really, from the opening kick, they looked like they were supposed to be there. They were on the same stage. So huge kudos to you. It's not often that you can pull a UConn winner out of your back pocket, but I'm actually going to go with the head coach here. I'm going to go with Seth Luttrell. Listen, North Texas was really kind of banging on the door to be involved in the conversation for the New Year's Six. I'd say maybe 4 or 5 years ago when they beat Arkansas down at Fayetteville. Luttrell looked like a rising star in the coaching ranks. Certainly, North Texas was going to be a stepping stone for him to get a Power 5 job. And he's kind of been treading water the last few years. They go 6-6 in the regular season last year. They end up losing in the bowl game. It just seems like he needed some positive momentum right out of the gate. And I love this for Luttrell and the Mean Green. They get a emphatic win on the road in Conference USA play. I was playing the under. You were playing North Texas. Both of those hit. And this is maybe a finer point than we usually get into, but I love it when a team can vary tempo. And by that, I mean, I knew that North Texas wanted to play fast. Yes, they were a run-first team, but my concern was after a 0-0 first quarter that once the offensive juices started flowing, that they were just going to keep putting up points and push over that closing total of 54. But here's what they did. In the first half, a 12-play drive, 19 seconds per play. Then they get a lead in the fourth quarter, and a lot of teams struggle with this. These up-tempo teams, it's like they just seem like, a dog walking around on its hind legs. Like they don't know how to play slower. It just looks off. 12 plays in the fourth quarter, 33 seconds per play. So able to take their foot off the accelerator, a hat tip to Seth Luttrell. They ended up only scoring 3 points total in the fourth quarter, making it comfortable for me in that spot. So he's my G5 hero of the week. Who did you pick here in week 0?
By the way, just North Texas real quick. I know we've been joking about Austin Auni's age. I actually looked this up. It's one of those things where I knew he was old, but then this stat really hit me. I was like, oh, he's old. So Austin Auni's birthday is next week. He's older than I am. And I graduated college 6 years ago, and he's older than me.
It's an impressive. He played in the Yankees organization for Double A ball, something like that. Yeah, it's amazing to me. I love going back to the Chris Winkie days. I think one of the Booty brothers was also in a farm system at one point.
Brandon Whedon was up there.
Brandon Whedon, I just love this little wrinkle of college football. And it's always funny to me because I remember myself at 19, 20, 21 hanging out with someone who is 28. I mean, it doesn't seem like that much time in terms of age, but just a gulf, huge difference between the personality styles and maturity. So the fact that he's leading a team and he's certainly old enough to rent a car, I think is it's a storyline we're going to go back to because it's a North Texas team that I think could become a fan favorite for us here on the pod. All right, let's jump in to best bets. Enough patting on the back here for week 0. Let's get into week 1.
I jumped. So that wasn't my G5 hero. I just want to point that out.
Okay.
So for my G5 hero, you mentioned it. I'm going to the Nutmeg State because if anyone has the pulse of Husky Nation, it's me. I'm going with my G5 hero of the week. I almost went to take on Roberson, who died for our sins and got the cover, and now is out for the year. But instead, I'm going to go with UConn linebacker Jackson Mitchell, Ridgefield, Connecticut native, grew up about a half an hour from where I'm from. He was the UConn's leading tackler last season. He was a force on that defense all last year, and he showed it again week 0. He had 16 tackles, 1 tackle for a loss, 1 sack. He forced a fumble. He recovered another fumble, and he helped UConn cover the spread. The UConn Huskies, the 2020 national champions, are officially 1-0 against the spread. And hopefully Jackson Mitchell had some Frank Pepe's in celebration of his heroic cover for the boys.
I love the UConn pick there. They're certainly deserving of all the adulation. Also, Utah State, I'm not going to play this week, but I mean, Alabama could just run off tackle left, off tackle right, and score 65 points in this game. No problem. Utah State is, to use a phrase that our producer loves to throw around, their back 7, it's just like bags of leaves back there. Nobody's moving. Wherever they're set up pre-snap, that's where they're going to be, when the whistle's blown. So Utah State, they've gone from an 11-win team to a team that struggled for about 3/4 with UConn. So keep an eye on them.
This is going to be a week. Usually we like to find the spot where the G5 teams can pull up the upset with Power 5. That might have to wait till next week because looking through the schedule, I have a bad feeling that the G5, there's going to be some dump truckings this week. There's some bad matchups for the G5 this week.
I mean, with that, I think you're teeing me up for my best bet. I'm going to go ahead and take Tennessee minus 34.5 hosting Ball State. You're going to want to get in as soon as you hear this because the line's been creeping up from 33. It's probably going to settle over that 5 touchdown threshold. I'd still play it at 35. Listen, I could wax poetic for a while here about why Tennessee's offense is going to be so good, but I'll just run you through some of the executive summary here. I'll say Hendon Hooker was tremendous down the stretch last year. 17 touchdown to 2 interception ratio in his final 6 games, which included 3 games against ranked opponents. Cedric Tillman went from a guy who's looking to be impactful, someone who could contribute in the receiving room, to an absolute all SEC level weapon. In his final 7 games, he scored 10 touchdowns, and averaged 7 receptions, 125 yards per game. They returned 4 starters on the offensive line. This offense is loaded and probably is going to score north of 50 points in this game against a Ball State defense that, listen, nothing prepares you for the swift drop from the upper ranks of the G5, because in 2020, that team that it had a dream season wins the MAC. Since then, this team has been on a downward trajectory. And when you look at them last season, they couldn't get after teams in the backfield. 80th in tackles for loss, 90th in sacks, 94th in passes defensed, 85th against the pass overall in terms of total yardage. And then you look into what they're bringing back, 127th in returning production overall, 127th on defense. 7 of their 8 tacklers are gone, 3 new starters in the secondary. And I mentioned that 2020 team. The heart and soul of that team was Bryce Cosby in their secondary. He was the one who coined the phrase Detroit or bust, ended up being prophetic. They go all the way to the MAC championship game and win it. Now he's trying to hold on with the Raiders in the NFL, a former G5 hero. Wish him the best. But Ball State's got some really big issues on the defensive side of the ball. So I think a 50 burger is in their future, giving it up to the Vols here. And then when you look at the offense, yes, they have a new quarterback. He's been in the program, I think, for 5 years now, John Paddock, but he's an undersized passer. I'm not really worried about him. And Tennessee, for all of their warts on defense last year, the one thing they could do is kind of the opposite of the Ball State defense. They really get after you in the backfield. They were very disruptive, 2nd in the SEC in tackles for loss, 8th nationally per game, just about 8 TFLs per game. And then you look at the personnel, Byron Young at linebacker, or I should say on the edge, Jeremy Bank as a true linebacker. These guys teamed up for 23 TFLs last season. They're both back. And I'll say one final thing before asking your opinion on this game. Josh Heupel is someone who surprised, I think, a few people last year after kind of a slow start to the season. They really heated up in the second part of the season. But when you look at his performance in season openers going back to UCF, 2018, they blew out UConn as a big favorite. 2019, FAMU, same thing, covering the spread. 2020 against Georgia Tech, same thing once again. And last season against Bowling Green, they scored 38 points, win 38-6. They end up not covering that game, but it's clear that they don't mind blowing out some also-rans in their first game of the season. So I'm going to lock this up as my best bet of the week. Love the Volunteers here. A lot of enthusiasm on Rocky Top. I think this is going to be a huge game. They are going to have to score north of 50 because I figure, Ball State will get frisky, score 14, 17 points in this game, but I think they can get it done. What are your thoughts on the Volunteers laying a huge number here in week one?
Yeah, I agree with you. I like it. I think they run it up. I think, Tennessee's one of those programs, Nebraska, Texas, that every year they get some hype and every year they don't live up to it. And I think it would be so perfectly Tennessee to get all this hype, to absolutely beat Ball State by 70 and then lose to Pitt next week. That would be very Tennessee. So I definitely think the hype train continues for at least one more week. We'll see what happens when they get an SEC play. But I agree. I think they score so fast. They're going to score at will against this Ball State team. And I'm with you. I just, I don't trust Paddock necessarily enough to go down. Tennessee's defense isn't very good, but I don't know that Paddock's the guy who can take advantage of that. I think, like I said, I think there's going to be some absolute beatdowns this week. And I'm also going to fade a MAC team as my best bet. Although, since we are the G5 pod, I'm going to do it with a G5 team. Maybe this is recency bias. Maybe. I'm taking FAU minus 3.5 at Ohio. They looked so good last week. They absolutely worked Charlotte 43-13. And maybe this is a little bit of my bias because I'm high on Charlotte. I played Charlotte's win total over. And yes, I know Chris Reynolds got hurt, but they dominated that Charlotte offense that I thought was going to be very good, that returned a ton of production. FAU outgained Charlotte 482 to 279. And the other thing, yes, I know this goes against Stuckey's article about how teams that have the extra rest and they have film on an opponent actually do have the advantage against the teams that have already played. Ohio obviously hasn't played. FAU just did. I know I'm going against that. But again, it's just FAU had a 51% success rate on offense. Charlotte was held to just 36%. And Reynolds got hurt, but Charlotte couldn't run the ball either. They had 62 rushing yards, 2.7 yards per carry. N'Kosi Perry looked awesome. He was 16 for 22, 256 yards, and a touchdown. He ran one in two. But the biggest thing that I'm optimistic about this is FAU ran for 218 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground without Johnny Ford, without their leading rusher. And yes, this is a situation we do have to monitor. Ford had been in and out of the lineup or practice all spring. There was, I even asked Brett Murphy about it on one of our shows. There was, academic issues. There was discipline issues. He did miss the game for what Willie Taggart called personal reasons. But he was on the sideline. He just wasn't in uniform. It's not like he was kicked off the team. He was there. He just couldn't play. Taggart said he is probable for Saturday. So to me, I'm expecting him to play. I think he probably got in some trouble, got a 1-game suspension. Hopefully he's back on the field. But they proved they could kind of do without him. And I'm just not high on Ohio. I know Stuckey took them to win the MAC, but that was more of just given the number and where they sit in the MAC division. They could still win the MAC, even without winning this game. They returned just 2 stars on offense. They were 115th in the country in TARP rating. I'm not high on Curtis Rourke. I don't think he's very good. They finished 10th in the MAC in scoring last season, and the defense really struggled as well. This defense forced just 8 turnovers all season. Do you know how hard it is to only force 8 turnovers in the MAC? You have guys like Matt McDonald just handing teams defenses the ball. They forced 8 turnovers in a whole season. That was 128th in the country. And they get 0 pressure on the quarterback, which is when N'Kosi Perry tends to struggle. So if you can't get pressure and you can't force turnovers, then I think Perry has absolutely no problem against this defense. I do wish Willie Taggart would play his son a little less. I don't love the nepotism mixing him in. Let's let Perry keep in rhythm. Taggart's fast, but so is Perry. Let's just stick to your quarterback. I think FAU runs it up on Ohio as well. So -3.5. I think Charlotte's better than Ohio, so I'll take the Owls and lay the 3.5.
I agree with you pretty much on every point there. And just let's dumb it down here. Of the, the 4 units, offense and defense for both FAU and Ohio, FAU's proven that they have the best unit on the field, which is their offense. That demonstration carried all the momentum from 2021 into this season. And they're up against, Ohio defense that couldn't stop the run at all last season. They only have 5 returning starters. Maybe if Ohio made a quarterback change, I'm so low on Curtis Rourke. If they went to CJ Harris, who's a 3-star sitting on their bench, maybe they could get a spark, but I don't see that happening in the first game. So I love that play right off the bat. All right, so we're going to hop in now for our G5 High Five. It is our round robin of week 1. We're going to go ahead and give you 5 picks. We're going to try to go a little bit faster here than our best bet segment. I'm going to start with Woo Pig Suey. Colin Wilson, this one's for you. Arkansas laying 6. I love the fact that it stayed under that key number of 7. And it's pretty simple in terms of what I'm getting with the Razorbacks here. KJ Jefferson is an established playmaker in the SEC. I think you can make a pretty strong argument that he's, the second or third best quarterback in this conference, which is saying a lot behind Bryce Young. But when you look at his supporting cast, this was really Sam Pittman's, objective when he came to Fayetteville. He needed to improve the supporting talent, the skill position talent around Jefferson, and he's done it. Jaden Hazelwood, Warren Thompson, Ketron Jackson Jr., Matt Landers, Trey Knox. When you go through those guys, that's a 5-star, 4-star, 4-star, 3-star, and another 4-star, and they're all big. The smallest guy in that group is 6'2". Most of them are 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", against a Cincinnati secondary that's breaking in new players, and many of whom are under 6 feet. I think this is an opportunity for this offense to really shine. And then I'm not even mentioning Rocket Sanders, who averaged 5.1 yards per carry last year with 4 starters back on the offensive line. I think this will be a Joe Moore Award finalist offensive line. So I love what I'm getting with the Razorbacks. And it's up against the Cincinnati defense, 115th in returning defensive production. So a lot of new faces. They're going to be really good in their receiving core in the middle, or linebacking core, I should say, in the middle of their defense. But outside of that, they have to really replace some highly impactful playmakers on that side of the ball. And to be honest, when you look through the last few years, Cincinnati has dominated defensively, but they haven't faced a running threat of Jefferson's level. Not only is he somebody who can run between the 20s, but when he gets into that red zone, he is that extra guy where the math starts to work for the offensive line. They can run quarterback power, they can run read option, and he's someone who's going to run people over in that second level of the defense. Jefferson was an 87 ranking from PFF last year, the best by an Arkansas quarterback since 2015. I just love everything about this Arkansas team in this spot. I'm really glad it stayed under that key number of 7. And then I'm going to throw in one extra little tidbit here on Cincy. Quarterback indecision. When they released their depth chart yesterday, Ben Bryant and Evan Prater, that dreaded or situation, you don't want to go into a hornet's nest that, is going to be Fayetteville in this spot. This fan base has been starving for a double-digit win team for years, and this is the team to get it done and to play a nationally ranked game right off the top against a team that made the college football playoff last year. This place is going to be a zoo, not the kind of environment that you want to have questions and playing musical chairs at quarterback. So all over the Razorbacks here. Is there any reason, to be more bullish on Cincinnati? Is it just, out of respect for Fickle and what he's built? Or am I absolutely on with this bet and you're going to tail me, Ianella?
Couldn't agree more. You don't lose the amount of talent since he lost and go into, an SEC environment with, you don't even know who your quarterback is. So I'm 100% with you. I love Arkansas on the spot. And for my first G5 High Five play, I'm actually going to back another SEC team as well. I'm taking Mississippi State -14.5 against Memphis. I think they absolutely truck them. You mentioned KJ Jefferson, maybe the second or third best quarterback in the SEC. I think Will Rogers is second. He led the SEC in yards per game last year, second in touchdowns. Stuckey talked about it a lot on his SEC preview. In the previous 3 times Mike Leach has had a third-year starter, they won at least 9 games and took a big step forward under that third-year quarterback. This is Will Rogers' third year. They returned 17 total starters Both their second leading rushers back. And sure, they don't run the ball, but they're great out of the backfield. Yes, they lose Mekhi Polk, but they bring back Jaden Walley, who I love. They bring back Austin Williams. They were fourth in the entire country in offensive success rate last season. And obviously, all they do is pass the ball. The Memphis defense was 103rd at defending the pass last season. They lose Calvin Austin, wide receiver, and tight end Sean Dykes, who were huge to their passing attack. And yes, Memphis brings back their top 2 running backs, and they added MAC freshman of the year Jay Ducker. Good luck running against this Mississippi State defense. Mississippi State's linebackers are nasty. So I don't think Memphis is going to have any success on the ground. And then there's that big old revenge factor, because Memphis won this game 31-29 last year. But if you look a little bit more, first of all, Memphis was coming off of a tough game against NC State, and they had LSU on deck. Now they have Arizona on deck, so it's not like they have to look forward, and they have the revenge part. In that game, Mississippi State outgained them 468 to 246. Will Rogers threw for 419 yards and 3 touchdowns. He torched them. Memphis returned a fumble 50 yards for a touchdown. Calvin Austin scored 3 touchdowns. One was like a weird little screen pass, and he returned a 94-yard punt return. That shouldn't have happened. That the referee signaled for it dead. Austin picked it up between 5 Mississippi State players standing there doing nothing and took it to the house. So Memphis had no business winning this game or really even being in this game. They were outgained 2-1. Mike Leach teams are 15, 10, and 2 against the spread as more than 2 touchdown favorites. They're 5-1-1 in their last 7 games as at least 2 touchdown favorites in non-con play. They are going to run it up. They're going to run it up quick. They're going to throw the ball all over Memphis. And again, you're going now this game is, in Mississippi State. The revenge factor, I think they come out and blow the doors out of Memphis. And I do still like Memphis. This is just a bad spot for them. I think Mississippi State crushes them.
I'm going to throw it up here. This is not the peace sign. This is 2 returning starters on that Memphis defense that wasn't even good last year. And I agree. I think in AAC play, they're going to be able to lean on their running game. That could be dynamic. They have a great running back room, but this isn't the spot to do it. I think also, digging into that box score, there was a lot of fool's gold there last year, looking at, hey, Memphis beat them last year. Why can't they do it again? Because as you pointed out, they had a lot of fluky plays and they absolutely got torched through the air. So I think that's a very strong play. But this is the G5 deep dive. Where are the plays on our G5 teams? All right, here we go. I'm going to hop in. I know technically they're not a G5 team, but I'm going to go New Mexico State here. Certainly in terms of their history, they've been linked with G5 conferences, so I'm going to grandfather them in. The Aggies plus 37 against Minnesota. And for those of you who stayed up through the lightning delay and watched the 1:30 a.m. conclusion, at least on the East Coast, of that game in week 0 against Nevada, you were all there for the birth of Gavin Frakes. It's the Gavin Frakes era. 3-star kid out of Norman, Oklahoma. He looks ridiculous. He looks like a Madden or a 2K creative player. He's got like this poofy red hair. He looks like a total joke. It's like a throwback to Carrot Top. But this guy can absolutely play. Like I said, a 3-star kid. He only got offers from Ivy League schools. I can't believe his parents were like, all right, you got an offer from Penn, Princeton, Yale. Hey, where are you going? You're going to Las Cruces, New Mexico. Interesting choice. It's because he wants to play at the highest level of college football. 6'4", 215, the ball explodes out of his hand. When he comes in after their starter turned the ball over at will, I think he had 4 or 5 turnovers in that game, basically threw New Mexico State out of it. Then comes in Frakes, 9 for 13, 143 yards and a touchdown. Coming off the bench, his first 2 drives, they scored 10 points. This guy is dangerous, and certainly plus 37 points, he's dangerous against a Minnesota team that is not explosive. We know PJ Fleck and this offense. We know the cast of characters. Plays of 40 yards or more last year, they were tied with Akron, Duke, Louisiana Monroe, and Arizona. That's the company that they're keeping in terms of explosiveness. They're plotting offense. And, their star player, Ibrahim is coming off an Achilles injury. I hope that he is as good as he was last year, but not in this game. It's certainly, not unrealistic to expect him to have some rust trying to recover from an injury of that kind. And when you look at their full slate in 2021, they scored 41 points once. They scored enough points to cover a number like this one time, and they did it against Northwestern, who was historically bad by Big Ten standards last year. But really, the play here for me is all because of the weird starts under PJ Fleck. Let's just go through the last 3 seasons. 2021, close win to start the year against Miami, Ohio. They lose against the spread. Then they lose outright to Bowling Green 14-10. Let's go back to 2020. As an 18.5-point favorite, they lose outright to Maryland. And then in 2019, it got even stranger. A 7-point win over South Dakota State, which was in doubt the whole way. And then a 3-point win as a huge favorite against Georgia Southern. Slow starts for the Golden Gophers. So when I saw a number north of 5 touchdowns, I grabbed it. I think it's still out there in the market above 35. Go ahead and grab that now. New Mexico State is feisty with Frakes. I'm in on the Aggies here.
Yeah, the only reason I haven't played that is because you mentioned, Ibrahim coming back for the injury. I'm curious if they really work, the Tanner Morgan, Kirk Shiraka reunion and try to throw the ball around and get him back into the form he was back when Shiraka was there originally. And you don't exactly know what kind of pace they're going to play. They ran the ball more than like any team in the country that wasn't a service academy last year. So I'd be a little worried that they throw the ball more just to try to get Morgan back to where he was. But I don't hate it at all. For my next play, I am going to back a G5 team. As you mentioned it, one of us has to do it. Give me Georgia State plus 13 at South Carolina. Back the SEC, now fade the SEC. I just am so high in this Georgia State team. I love Darren Granger. They're 8-2 with him as the main guy. 1,700 yards, 19 touchdowns, just 4 picks. Plus he added 646 on the ground, 3 tutters. They returned their top 2 stud running backs, one of whom I really love in this matchup because they have Tucker Gregg and they have, I always forgot to say his name, Jamie S. Williams, who both of which had over 850 yards and 9 touchdowns last year. Williams started his career as a cornerback at South Carolina. He earned SEC All-Freshman honors as a corner. He is a freak athlete. Now he's with Georgia State, returning to South Carolina as a running back. I think he has a monster game on the ground. Georgia State returns 4 offensive line starters, which will help that running game. And their defense got a ton of pressure on the quarterback last year. They set a school record in sacks, tackles for loss, and turnovers. They returned 7 starters on that defense, led by all Sun Belt safety Antavius Lane, who's like basically their center fielder, just roams the backfield. And South Carolina does return their entire offensive line, but they were horrible last year. So, how much can we put in that? South Carolina is kind of a weird team to judge because, they were 97th in success rate on offense last year. But yeah, that was with Luke Doty, Jason Brown, Zeb Nolan. So yeah, I'm not big on Spencer Rattler. Anyone who watched QB1 can probably thinks he's an asshole. So I think he's a dick. So I don't like him at all. But he's certainly a big upgrade over those 3 guys. So it's kind of interesting to see where they'll be. Defensively, South Carolina obviously well overperformed expectations last year. They led the SEC in turnovers forced on defense. That's going to be hard to replace. And, their defense was good against the pass, but that's because teams didn't pass against them. They were torched on the run. They allowed 175 yards per game on the ground. Now this defense, they lose their best player up front in Kingsley Ngagbare, who is now on the Packers, and they lose their best player in the secondary, Jalen Foster. So I'm not sure what this defense is going to be. And like I said, they greatly outperformed expectations last year. They went 7-6, but they only beat ECU by 3. They only beat Troy by 9. So it's not like they're blowing teams out. And South Carolina plays at Arkansas next week, and they have Georgia after that. So this could be a sleepy spot for them, knowing they have 2 big SEC games on deck. This is the game I mentioned where I would not be surprised if you look on the ESPN ticker and Georgia State is up 6 in the second quarter. So I'm taking Georgia State. I'm taking the 13 points. Give me the Panthers.
I mentioned this on the Sun Belt preview. The Sun Belt East is, for my money, the best G5 division in all of G5 lands. And this is the little program that could. Sean Elliott has done such an incredible job. 3 straight bowl trips. They won 7 of 8 down the stretch last year. So this isn't like a flash in the pan projection. Oh, they got, some portal guys from the Power 5. No. This team has already proven that they can beat the brakes off of teams. They crushed Ball State in the bowl game. So I think they're going to come in with a lot of confidence and also kind of some of that, nothing to lose element. South Carolina, shockingly, really, if you told me at the beginning of last year that they'd come into this year with some pressure and some expectations on their shoulders, I would have been shocked. But Beamer has people buzzing in Columbia, so they have to come out and they have to play really well right away. And I agree, Rattler, from a personality standpoint, when things didn't go well at Oklahoma, he wasn't someone to get it turned around. When things were going great the year prior, when they're crushing Florida in the Cotton Bowl and things like that, he looked really strong and he flashes all the incredible arm talent that NFL draft guys love. But he's someone that if you can get on him early, and to your point, if they can win the first half or the first quarter, I think that the pressure is going to slide squarely onto his shoulders. I'm not sure if I'll play the full game, but I'll probably play the first half. I think it could be juicy in terms of the money line to be leading at halftime in that game. So I think that's how I'll go ahead and play it. All right, to wrap up our G5 high five round robin here, I have an under. I think early in the season, I think some of these numbers are inflated just because you look at last year's production that doesn't necessarily take into account everything that was lost in terms of TARP. And, the public is very much leaning on last year's results. But I was surprised that Boise State, Oregon State was over that 8 touchdown threshold. At sitting at 57, I really like the under here between the Broncos and the Beavers. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, to be honest, because Boise State is 18th in returning production on defense. Half of the defense made one of the preseason All Mountain West teams. Spencer Danielson, as a defensive coordinator, is proven to be a hell of a coach. I mean, last year, when you go down some of the key metrics, 11th in scoring defense, 10th in interception rate, 24th in sack rate, and this one I absolutely love in terms of cashing unders, 9th in red zone touchdown percentage. So they play a little bend but don't break defense, and they can stop people when they get inside their 20. Oregon State, on the other hand, they're run some more. 20th most run-heavy team in the nation last year. Didn't hit a ton of big plays as a result. And they lose B.J. Baylor, who was their workhorse, 1,300 yards, 13 TDs. I think they're going to do it a little bit running back by committee in this game. And then when you look at what they have in the passing game, 92nd through the air. So I'm just a little confused where these big plays are supposed to come from. And then when you look at Boise State, they played under this number, 57, in 7 straight games in 2021. It was one of the most, lukewarm offenses really in Boise State history. And Bachmeier is back at quarterback. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. Yes, the offensive line should be a little bit better. He was under duress way too much. And maybe they can establish they got that Wazoo transfer at tackle. Maybe Halani gets going early in this game. But I think they're going to do it with the short passing game. They don't have Khalil Shakir anymore. He's gone. So the only big play threat between these two teams is gone in this game. So I really like, under 57 here. My numbers called for this to be 52. So I got 5 points of value. Hit the week 0 under with UTEP and North Texas. So I'm going to go back to the well here. What are your thoughts on this total between a Mountain West power and an also ran in Pac-12?
I mean, you never have to convince me to, fade Hank Bachmeier. I also think the fact that how hard Oregon State went after JT Daniels kind of speaks volumes to how they feel about their quarterback situation as well. So I'm down on Bachmeier. Oregon State's basically admitted they're down on their own quarterback. So I agree with you. Without Shakir there, where's the explosiveness coming in this game? Where's the 40-yard touchdowns coming here? Unless Bachmeier throws a pick 6, but.
So that wraps up our G5 High Five round robin, which brings us to, at least for my money, my favorite part of the podcast, which is the G5 Underdog Moneyline Parlay. When you put these together, I'm going to tease it right now, you can get close to 10-1 on your money. I'll go ahead and start, and it's a big swing. But you know what? Sometimes you got to be a little bold, and there's no better time to be bold than week 1 in college football. Going with the South Florida Bulls at plus 350 to beat BYU at home. Listen, only 5 schools in the entire country are top 15 in returning offensive and defensive production. USF is one of those schools. They bring in Gary Bohannon at quarterback to give them a steady hand. He was, an integral part of the Big 12 champs last year in Waco. He's a great locker room guy. He easily won the job. Timmy McClain ends up transferring out of the program. So the keys have been handed to him in a critical season here in Tampa for the Bulls. But the real reason I'm on this, it's all about Bob Shoop at defensive coordinator, 2-time defensive coordinator of the year, fielded incredible defenses in Mississippi State and Penn State. And now you got BYU traveling a long way to play in the muggiest, hottest, stickiest weather that possibly can be served up in Central Florida. It's going to be about 95 degrees at kickoff, humidity in the 80s, 90s, thunderstorms in the area, at least according to weather.com as of right now. And this is a BYU team that loses their bell cow and Tyler Algier. So it's all on Jaren Hall, who I think is a good quarterback. But much like, Will Levis in the SEC, I think it's overstated how good he is, because when you look at the numbers, you start to nod your head and you're impressed. But when you dig through, you look at, he played Idaho State and Virginia, put up huge numbers in those two games. You take those away, how did he do in the rest of his games? I think it was 8 full starts after that. 13 TDs to 5 picks, 242 yards per game through the air. That's it. So, yes, he finished 15th in QBR. I'm just not sure, with more of the offensive load on his shoulders, even though he returns his top 3 pass catchers, I'm not sure he gets it done in this spot. And USF has a lot of fight at home. When you look at them last season, you're looking for key indicators of a team that potentially could take that jump. It's a drive for 6 kind of team. They're looking to get to bowl eligibility this year. They were 4-0 as home dogs last year, and they got within 5 of nationally ranked Houston in the closing minutes, and within 10 of Cincinnati, went to the college football playoff also in the last 5 minutes of that game. So they were not getting blown out by the better teams on their schedule down the stretch, and I think they're certainly going to get up for a game like this. So I'm going to go ahead and fade a BYU team that, uncharacteristically, I think they're going to rely a little bit more on their offense this year and their passing game. And I'm just not a huge believer in Jaren Hall. I think they're going to get bit here by a G5 team that's kind of laying in the weeds. So I'm going to go with South Florida plus 350 to get this money line parlay kicked off.
Yeah, I like that. We talked about it in the preview, but I love USF this year. They bring in Bohannon, who literally won the Big 12 last year. They bring back top 3 leading rushers. They have their wide receiver unit is sick with Xavier Weaver, Jimmy Horn. They bring in Ajo from Clemson. I think UCF is going to be pretty good this year. For my underdog parlay, I'm going to another team we talked about a lot in the preview shows. I'm taking Southern Miss plus 140. They're another one of those teams where you have to just throw out everything they did last year. They lost 4 different quarterbacks in the first 5 weeks. They were literally playing the Wildcat last year with Frank Gore Jr. Sophomore Ty Keys is back. He was really highly touted out of high school. You mentioned wasn't he Mr. Mississippi or something, like the Gatorade Player of the Year? He had SEC offers: Auburn, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Oregon, Nebraska. Maybe we should have gone to Nebraska. But they bring back Frank Gore, who now can actually play running back. They bring back their top 3 leading receivers. Their defense returned 7 starters. And the defense actually was pretty solid last year. Some of the numbers are a little skewy because they basically had short fields every single possession because their offense was so bad. But they finished best in the conference against the pass last year. They were 24th in the entire country. Southern Miss has the 3rd best TARP rating in the nation this year. And then Liberty on their side ranks just 90th in TARP. They bring back just 3 starters on offense, all of whom are on the offensive line, 3 on defense. And they lose Malik Willis, who, I don't think Malik Willis is very good, but you could argue there's maybe not a single player more important to a team than he was to that team with all he did. 2,800 yards, 27 touchdowns passing, 878 yards rushing, 13 touchdowns on the ground. He was their entire offense. Speaking of old people, Charlie Brewer takes over as quarterback. He's probably 30. He's in his 6th season in college football, his 3rd different team. They did pretty good in the transfer portal, but I think they're just going to take time to gel. They have a lot of turnover here, and Southern Miss is a team I'm high on, and plus 140 is a pretty reasonable number at home. A nice home dog to start the slate for a team I like against a team replacing basically their entire team. Give me Southern Miss. You don't just waltz into Hattiesburg and expect an easy game. So give me the Eagles.
This is a Liberty team that lost to UL Monroe last year. That to me sets the floor, and that floor is real low. And that's with an NFL with Malik Willis. I agree. I think there's just a little bit of recency bias thinking back to that year when they played that great bowl game against Coastal Carolina, all the hype for Malik Willis. This is a team, I understand it's Hugh Freeze, but it's not just plug and play. And when you're plugging in Charlie Brewer, that's like, putting in a USB port and it's like not compatible with your computer, like reformatting. the guy is not plug and play at all. And you're up against a Southern Miss team that returns their head coach, their OC, their defensive coordinator, and their quarterback. I love that kind of continuity. Southern Miss is a team that I think is being slept on in the Sun Belt to potentially win their division. I understand that Louisiana has just kicked butt for years in the West, but I think Southern Miss is going to be a challenge for everyone that they play this year. So I love that. And the fact you get them at home, a home dog, let's get it going. Like, let's hit this 10-1, get everybody, loving the podcast right from the start. All right. It's important now for us to run through all of our picks. So I'm going to do a little housekeeping here in terms of our full slate. Our best bets, Ianello likes FAU -3.5. I'm on the Tennessee Volunteers -34.5. For our G5 High Five round robin, we're going to start with Arkansas -6.5, New Mexico State +37, Boise State under 57, Mississippi State -14.5, and Georgia State +13. A reminder that's our moneyline underdog parlay of South Florida and Southern Miss pays +980 at MGM. You can also find it out in the market a little bit north of 10-1. So closing thoughts here, I know, were there any games that were just on the cutting room floor for you that almost made it onto this list?
Yeah, I like the Arkansas one a lot. I think UCLA trucks Bowling Green. That was probably the next one on my floor. I like Michigan State to really beat up Western Michigan too. It's at like -21.5 now. I took it at 18.5, so that's why I didn't really give it out. I like Arizona getting 6.5 at San Diego State. That's the other one. Those are kind of the ones that circled my mind.
I'll just ask your opinion on this. The Colorado State number against Michigan, it was sitting at about 26-27 for weeks, in the lead up to the season. And now it's steamed up to 30.5, 31. We just don't know with this Colorado State team. There's so many new faces, a new coaching staff, but there's talent. They got a 4-star quarterback. They have a really nice receiving core. I don't know. I'm a little bit intrigued by this game because I know that Michigan has some drama in their locker room with their quarterback situation. They're going to let McNamara start one and then McCarthy start another one, which is an interesting move because what are you going to learn from Colorado State and Hawaii in the first 2 weeks? But that notwithstanding, where do you come down on a team that could be so high variance? Colorado State could lose this game by 17, and I wouldn't be shocked, and they could lose by 45, and I'd be kind of in the same emotional state. So it's a stay away for me. But I'm interested that more points are being thrown towards an offense that potentially could have some pop. If they're anything like those Norvell offenses at Nevada and they have the skill to do it, then they're a live dog in this game. What do you think about the Rams?
I'm thinking, as I didn't put much thought in it until you asked me. And now that you're mentioning, I'd have to look at the number. I maybe wouldn't hate the over here. If you like Colorado State's offense to have some pop, because my worry with playing the Rams with the points is if Michigan is using these two games as a tryout, do they just let McNamara ball out the whole game? If he's fighting for his job, he might be throwing it deep in the fourth quarter to try to outplay McCarthy next week. So you worry if they basically say 2 games, let's let our quarterbacks ball out and see who balls better. That would be my concern. If these are tryouts, they don't take the foot off the gas. So maybe you play the over, hope McCarthy keeps chucking or McNamara keeps chucking it around. If you like the pop in Colorado State's offense, I'd maybe look to the over. I'd have to look at I don't have the number in front of me.
It's 61.5. So I'm checking that box. I think that's our official bonus pick here of week 1, over 61.5. Colorado State, Michigan, a noon kickoff to get to, your college football Saturday started, headed in the right direction. For our listeners, if you're listening to this podcast, very shortly thereafter, we'll be dropping the extensive week 1 preview. That's with Colin and Stuckey. We're going to be mixing in Brett McMurphy throughout. We'll also have the Big Bets on Campus live show on Saturday. Be sure to tune in for that. For Mike Ianello, I'm Mike Calabrese. This has been the Group of 5 deep dive under the Big Bets on Campus banner. Happy to be back. Happy week 1 is here. Best of luck with your bets.